Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Meet a CHM Family Member. My name is Cory MacDonald. I am the Patient Engagement Director for the Choroideremia Research Foundation. Before we jump in, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Biogen, Santen, Spark Therapeutics, and Genentech. And with me tonight, for those who have watched other ones of this, I'm not sure which one is the better looking brother, but I've interviewed his brother Todd recently. But I'd like to welcome Justin Purvis tonight. How you doing tonight, Justin?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me on and giving me a chance to talk to you and be a part of this. Super excited.
Yeah, you've been around the CHM family for quite a while and have done quite a few things, and you have not just with the CRF stuff but other things on your own. So we're going to get into quite a bit of things. I mean, gosh, you've been an improv comic. You have invented games.
Yeah, there's been a lot trying to find my niche, trying to find the thing I love doing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but now you're more recently to a father.
Yes, I've got a
business owner and
fun and feisty 6.5-year-old. He's great. He's got Down syndrome, and he's probably the happiest kid I've ever seen in my life, 99% of the time. But then that 1%, that's. Yeah, I mean, as we all know, everyone who has kids, regardless if they're neurotypical or have needs beyond the norm, they're hellions when they want something and you don't give it to them.
He's 6.5 now?
6.5 now, yeah. He's just started first grade officially. Because his birthday's in December, so it falls into that horrible category of with everyone where, oh, your birthday's after the school year starts, so you have to wait a year. But he's great. We have a fantastic school nearby, near the house, and they have a great program for therapies for him. So he gets a lot of help, and the classes are really small, especially during these crazy trying times.
I have a little. Well, I can't call him a little cousin anymore, Kirk, but he's also Downs. He just had a few weeks ago his 45th birthday.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that, because there's so many people talk about the life expectancy of people with Down syndrome and how
they were wrong.
Yeah, and I love proving that, man. The story of us finding out that Finnegan had Down syndrome was insane. We got ourselves. Finn was born. So we didn't know anything. We didn't want to know the sex, but my wife, being a nurse, saw something on the ultrasound, and she's like, "Did I just to the OBGYN? Did I see something?" And I was like, "Well, obviously you're not going to see a lady part, so clearly we're having a boy. Okay, cool." But we didn't know anything else about it. He was born. The nurses came in and they were like, "I think your son has Down syndrome." And then they went through all the things, and we got an official diagnosis by, if not professionally, this doctor was like a Ben Stein impersonator, the most unemotional, matter of fact, and saying all the things that we have always heard about kids with Down syndrome, how that, basically never going to amount to anything, always be dependent on you, yada 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 yada. So it was horrible to hear that, but what we've seen is, just like you just said, Finnegan and so many other kids with Down syndrome blow it out of the water. That he's so smart, and he's got his delays, but we all have them. But it's just like, he's just a normal kid that just needs a little extra care. It's
exactly. Now, how are you adjusting? Obviously, with being low vision and being around a young one running around the house, a little extra anxiety. I know when my grandkids were little, I was anxious as heck.
For me, to be honest, the first 6 months to a year, it was perfect because he didn't move at all. Yeah, you put him here, you can walk away for an hour and he's still there because he hasn't rolled over or whatever. But now he runs around a lot. And my wife is super aware of being, she's a mom to a 22-year-old from a previous marriage, and with Finn, and she transfers that momness onto me, of being like, he's in front of you, and some of the time I see him and other times I don't. I'm always appreciative of somebody looking out, but I think he's learning as well, because we take as many opportunities as possible when necessary to remind him, say, you know, Daddy can't see very well or whatever, so that, you know, I think he's really getting it, whether or not it's completely coming out through his communication. But for the most part, I've never, no, like once or twice walked and he's laying on the middle of the floor, sitting hunched over with an iPad, and I don't see him, and kicked him right in his butt.
Yeah.
But for the most part, he tends to stay out of the way.
When
I'm very careful. I'm usually like, Finnegan, where are you? Where are you, buddy?
Well, my granddaughter,
He's
granddaughter Khaleesi was, she was about a year and a half or so. So she was mobile and quite tiny. And my wife found the most wonderful thing ever for a CHMer with low vision that's around a little one. She found little sneakers for toddlers that had squeakers in the heels.
Yes.
So she squeaked as she walked across the floor, and she loved it. And I always knew exactly where she was. She went through 3 pairs of those things. As I mentioned, you had done improv comedy.
I think that my eyes, though, having this disorder and kind of being a shut-in was one of the reasons I started doing performance stuff.
Really one of the cool things you did. You invented a card game.
I did.
Lights, camera, action. It's Movie Buff.
Todd and I spent we realized early on that we had all this useless knowledge. We loved movies. When I remember living in Germany, my dad on the weekends, we would go to the local the American video store on base, and we'd get like 3 movies, one for me, one for my brother, and one for my parents on Friday night. And then on the entire Friday night, my brother and I would watch all 3 movies. No. And we just started having this click. All this information was in our head. Everything from, oh, that actor was in this movie, and that, you know, this, that, and the other, and lines and characters. And so we used to play these verbal games early on where we would kind of challenge each other to make connections. Like we would give each other 2 actors, kind of like 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. You give each other 2 actors, and the goal being to make the connection in the least amount of jumps. Okay. And so that's where the Movie Buff kind of started from, was in that regard. And so in the early 2000s, after finding more and more people who played that game that I thought I had invented, I was like, well, I'm going to turn it into an actual card game where there's some strategy involved as well as just trivia. And so I started working on it, and in 2004, I came out with the first prototype for it. And like you said, you own the game, so you know how to play it, but it would utilize all of your knowledge in a film. So you've got like the movie card, you lay it down, you name a movie. The next player has to take one of their trivia cards. Let's say it's the role card. They lay it down, they name a role from that movie you just named. And, you know, the next person has an actor card. They name one of the actors who's in the movie. The next person plays a quote card, gives any line of dialogue from the movie. And when you get all 4 pieces, just like 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, now we jump to a new movie using that first one. So if we were in like Aliens and we finished that take, that's what we called the round, you would use anybody in there. So let's say we use Michael Biehn, we jump to Tombstone, we lay the movie card down and we say Tombstone. So now we've jumped from Aliens to Tombstone because Michael Biehn is in both movies. Started up again. But then we introduced strategy cards to help people who don't know movies as well as I do to be able to at least compete in the game. And I made the game, and I lose it 75% of the time because so much of it is just luck of the draw. If you get stuck with a hand that's just not going to do you any good, no matter how much you know, or if the strategy cards get used against you, so you keep not getting a chance to have a turn, then yeah, you can lose the game very easily. But anyone can win it. That's what I would tell people when we're at these conventions. They would say, oh, I'm no good at this game. I don't know movies. And then I would challenge them, say, you're going to win this. Just watch. And I sometimes I'd help them through it. Say, I want you to start thinking about a movie you really love that you can watch anytime it comes on. I'm going to come to you in a second. That's when I start the spiel. And then they ended up winning. They ended up loving it. I've even had people who are like, I don't like this game, but I liked your spiel and I have to buy it now because of that. And I was like, I appreciate it.
I have fun with it. By the way, too, I can do, and I have won this challenge every time that somebody tried me on it. hard rock and metal music, I can play 6 Degrees of Separation, Black Sabbath.
See,
I
and
can,
that's
I can link up any band or artist, hard rock and metal, with to Black Sabbath in 6 steps or less.
see that, and that's where when we found out, when my wife and I found out we were pregnant, and then I went into full on either get a job mode or make Movie Buff a reality mode. We did, we jumped in and we started seeing how the very first thing that people would do is, oh, can we do this with TV? And I was like, well, it's built for movies, but if you simply just replace movie with TV show, you can do it. But yeah. Cory and I started talking about how there are other connections, music being one of those. And so we had been working on sequels to the games, being music buff, TV buff, other concepts that have fallen by the wayside for various reasons. Mm-hmm. And most of it being since I've gotten involved in the blind vendor program here in Kentucky as part of the Randolph Shepherd Act. We still actually carry our games within the shops I run. And, on the off chance somebody wants to buy it. But we talk about it if we have to. But yeah, that's all kind of fallen by the wayside. And it's so kind of bittersweet because I love movies so much and I don't ever get a chance to watch them because I'm a parent and I am running multiple locations for the business. I never have any downtime. And then also my wife's like, I don't want to watch a movie. Let's watch Grey's Anatomy that's still on after 20 years. And now we got to watch them all. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But pick like Firefly, 1 season, 8 episodes, and we can move on to something else. But now we got to watch Grey's Anatomy and it's, it's fine. It's okay.
Yeah. My wife and I'm lucky in that, neither one of us are very much into, like network TV series type things. I think there's like one network TV series, but History Channel, National Geographic, all that stuff, like all the time. Pretty much that, sports and local news is our viewing. And then we like watching stand-up comics.
You're supposed to be escaping. You're supposed to be escaping reality.
What do you think sports is?
Well, that's a good point. And that's one of the things for me is like when we watch, like Cory would love certain shows, especially Mad Men. And I tried watching it with her and I would just get angry by the end of the episode for many reasons. Like nothing ever happens in that show. But I know that actually stuff does happen. But I was like, this is like watching real life where there are things that occur that have no consequences.
And sitcoms for me got boring
a
long time ago because you see the joke coming. I mean, of course, you have your background in improv comedy. I worked as a clown. And so it's like, you see the stuff coming from 2 miles away.
Yeah, so many films these days are like that, which is kind of sad. But I keep watching them because you come across one that surprises you, that makes it twist. And then you're like, good, I wasn't expecting that. And that makes it more relevant or at least more like entertaining. Yeah, but so many things are just completely telephoned in. Like, this is what's coming. This is your daughter in the future.
Yeah.
But hey, whatever.
That's okay. Historical movies are good. I like those. And, even though they do take a little bit of license with the reality, but that's okay.
Tarantino does the same thing. I finally got a chance to sit down and watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a bit long.
Mm-hmm.
I love Tarantino. And I get, again, once you know how filmmakers work, you start to understand why they chose to do these things. Like the long driving scenes that just Brad Pitt driving around montage. Like that's kind of what they did back in that time period with films. So I get it. It's almost like showing this is a new technology that we can make it look like we're driving in a car, man. But the end of the movie, without going into it, I was like, how are they going to do this? I was thinking to myself,
yeah, because it's coming with a Tarantino movie. You know it's coming.
But then from his previous films, he has done some revisionist history. And I was like, I wonder if he's going to follow that same logic. And the end of the movie, I loved the end of it. The last half hour was great. But like leading up to it, I was like, okay, what's going on? This is kind of slow, et cetera, et cetera. But again, it also depends on your mood because sometimes you're in a mood for a particular type of movie Like for me, I could always watch action or sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter. So other movies, I'm like, my wife's like, hey, do you want to go see there's some new the Joe Bell movie? And I was like, I know what this movie is. I have no interest in seeing it in the theater because I go to the theater to watch Star Wars or Star Trek or, you know, any sort of action film, lots of explosions.
Something you can really immerse into.
Yeah. I don't want to watch, like, to me, going to see films like Blue Jasmine or Joe Bell is like, that's like going to watch any sort of Chekhov's The Seagull in live performance. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to watch a play. I'm going to watch a movie. I want to eat popcorn and drink my cherry Coke and watch things blow up and craziness ensue.
Yeah.
But yeah, certain movies, you have to be in the mindset for this, that, and the other. Others, you can just pop on and watch anytime and just love it.
Yeah. I haven't been to a movie. The last movie I saw in a theater where I realized I wasn't seeing all of the movie was Beavis and Butthead Do America. That was the last one I saw in the theater.
Like, this was obviously after you've had your diagnosis, right?
Yes.
Okay, but still, you were just now realizing how affected you were.
How shrunk down. Yeah, like I didn't realize it until I saw it on regular TV.
Yeah,
when I had seen Forrest Gump, that I was missing things.
Yeah,
which was a few years before. But I noticed it as I sat on the very last row in the theater watching Beavis and Butthead, because I literally I turned my head and looked to one side of the screen and then turned back, and I could see, wow, there's a lot
there's something going on over here.
Yeah.
It was happening.
Yeah, so
yeah. I have not started to do the audio description with films because honestly, I feel like so many of them, I've heard some audio description going on, and we actually have audio description for Driving Blind. But it's weird. I don't think that, number one, it seems as though, and again, it might be different places do different things, very monotone voice, like a visual chart, a man with no shirt on, some guy's being punched. And I'm just like just like with the GPS systems, they should get people to do it with, like, it's Sam Jackson to audio description. That would be amazing. Yeah. I would watch every movie with audio description if Samuel L. Jackson was doing it.
My daughter and her then husband Jerry had a TomTom. They bought it like a pawn shop or something, and it had preloaded on it. They had Beavis and Butthead doing directions. It was hilarious. I mean, they would make wrong turns on purpose, you know, just so that Beavis and Butthead would come on and start picking on them.
I love it.
You know,
did you ever use Waze, the other app that's out there?
I haven't yet, but I've been in cars where other people are using it. So,
and one of the voices on there is like, I think they call it like pop star, and it's a guy almost like being auto-tuned. He's like, turn right.
Oh no!
And it's both annoying and beautiful because my wife and I do that all the time. We're in the car, like, turn right.
We have a British guy named Daniel on our GPS. You know,
my wife does the same thing. She's got a British guy named probably Trevor or somebody who
Daniel's pretty cool, and he's fun listening to because he invariably will mispronounce names of streets that, you know, like, you know, near our house we have Roosevelt Avenue, you know, and turn right on Roosevelt Avenue. Yep. Roosevelt.
It's so funny here in Kentucky too, because Kentucky has Versailles, which is spelled the same way that spelled Versailles.
Nice.
And so again, when you have them on, they're like, turn left, take exit 42 for Versailles. No, they say Versailles because they're taking it the correct way. I mean, who's to argue which one is what? But yeah, so it's the same thing here.
Yeah. So let's get into we'll get away from movies and entertainment for a minute.
Yeah, let's start recording this thing. Enough small talk.
Oh, wait a minute. We are recording.
Wait.
Anyway. Oops. the Randolph Shepherd Act. Now, you mentioned that a little bit ago, and I know that there are some people within the CHM community that know about it, but I also know there's a lot of people who don't. So why don't you give us a brief description how you got into it and exactly what it is? Sure.
Short story, my mom. Long story, I'll tell you. So the Randolph Shepherd Act was, I'm going to give you like the very layman's version of it, was created in like the 1930s as a way to give blind entrepreneurs, blind business owners, blind workers a chance to have their own business that they run as their own in federal and state buildings. So like you go to the federal courthouse, or you go to I'm trying to think of other places, like any sort of state-run agency. If you see, like back in the day, you would see the guy with the newspaper stand, and that was more than likely being run by somebody with vision loss. And so I think 2 years ago when I first got involved in it, I think 48 of the 50 states had the program going. Some of them didn't. I don't know which ones they are, right? The two that didn't have them. I know that Hawaii has it, which is like, sweet, I'm going to move to Hawaii and I'll do the Randolph Shepherd Act out there. But it basically gives you it's almost like how a lot of smaller businesses, when they're looking to bring in essence, it's a minority owned business in essence. And how in the States, we had these wonderful grants and loans that could give minority business owners a chance to have a business and running it, where they maybe subsidize and offset their rent or utilities or things like that. With the Randolph Shepherd Act and the blind vendor programs in each of these states, it gives us a space to operate in within a state or federal building where we don't have to worry about the stuff that traditionally crushes small businesses. We don't have to worry about paying a mortgage or a rent or lease on a space. We don't have to worry about paying for the utilities, electric, water, et cetera, because they're already being paid for as part of the building by the state or federal government. But beyond that, it becomes our business that we get to run. Like I got started in it I did training in 2018, and I started running my first place when a guy was retiring in April of 2019. It was a small little probably like 400 square foot snack bar canteen in a big building that housed about, at the time, 1,200 people. And so it was like a little convenience store. We made fresh sandwiches there and sold them, and there were sodas, fountain sodas, and popcorn chips, yogurts, all that jazz, ice cream. And then in that same space, there had been a cafeteria that had been closed down for over 2 years for renovations that was being run by a completely different department. They opened it up and I took that over. We were running it Monday through Friday. That's the great thing about this is you're Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, theoretically. But when my wife and I were doing it, it was every single day, 16 hours a day, just keeping it up and running, because that's what we do. But it gave us a chance. We didn't have to worry about utilities. We didn't have to worry about rent. But what we did have to worry about is buying the product. We had to worry about paying our staff and all of the other incidentals, like if we wanted to have cable so that people could watch TV, or we wanted to, we had to pay for insurance, all that stuff. It's a stepping block for a blind vendor to be able to get into a space and have some safety that even if they don't make any money, they're not going to lose the space. As in, they're never going to sit back worried at night saying, how am I going to pay for the rent on this space? And so that's been something truly amazing that we've had the opportunity to do it. And each of the states has multiple sites that can be bid on. So it's almost like government contracting where, if I've been working in my spot for a while, but I want to transition, like we were in the capital, Frankfurt, for a year. And then we got into another spot that's in Louisville, because that's where we lived. And every day we were commuting like 45 minutes each way to get to Frankfurt to run these spots. And we started to see that for various reasons, we're like, getting a spot in Louisville is going to be a better deal for us. It's less travel and so forth. But it's just something truly great that we as blind individuals can utilize if we're so inclined. And going back to say my mom is the short story as to why I got involved in this. She used to tell me this years and years and years ago, maybe not fully knowing what it was, but she talked about it. And she would say, what I would say to her is when she says, like, great, Mom, go research that and bring the information to me because I won't even know where to start. And so we were doing, we had Movie Buff going, and we were doing conventions every weekend. And I reached out to, after enough prodding from my mom, I reached out to, here in Kentucky, it's called the Office for Vocational Rehab. They got an actual building that helps adults with newly into the blind community to learn all the things from, movement cane stuff, as well as home health care, taking care of yourselves and food and so forth. And I got a little counselor, and she started talking about the program. And so after a period of time, I was like, okay, well, tell me more about this. And there was, there was a training, which was really great because it was almost like miniature culinary school. We got to the technical college, and we were taking I was taking cooking classes from the chef. It was me and 6 or 5 other blind people training in order to become part of the program. And it was great to kind of get connected to the blind community because for a lot of time, for the most part, except for at conferences, I'm not connected to the blind community at all because we've got other things we need to do. And I haven't had time to go out and find anymore. Although I did just find there's a guy, his name is Ray Osborne. He lives here in Louisville, and he's also got choroideremia, and we connected. And I'm like, cool, you're going to be my best friend now because I don't have any blind friends. So I need to have
I've corresponded with Ray, yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome. And he's got a really great card game coming out. I helped him with the, he told me about it. I said, I'm in, man. I'm buying copies. I'm going to have them at my shop. So let's do this thing. So I'm excited about it because anything with zombies, and I'm like, done. I'm in. Let's play it. He's awesome, and it was great to find another person with choroideremia. And he actually lived like 10 minutes away from me. So I'm like, this is even better. Like we're all on the same side of town. We can hang out.
Cool.
But yeah, no, this program is truly amazing. My mom pushed on it, and I finally got involved, and it's an amazing program. As with everything in the world, there's hurdles and obstacles and frustrations, but we have done so well as a family, not having to our old days was my parents would come and watch Finn for the weekend while Cory and I drove off to St. Louis or Chicago or San Antonio to go and do these conventions and not having to pack up everything, having a little bit more downtime for ourselves and for our son. Because I think there was a time where my mother Finnegan was thinking more that my mother was his mother than his mother was his mother. Because
yeah,
my mom and dad spent more time with him because we were out traveling trying to make this thing work.
Yeah. So let me now, as your site has, let's talk about CHM a little bit. Now, have you how has it personally affected you, or you're using any types of adaptive technologies yet? And what are they, or whereabouts are you right now with your site?
So I have not been to see an ophthalmologist in a few years because I think as many of us with choroideremia or any sort of progressive degenerative disease are aware, it's never going to get better without intervention, right? Without clinical trials and so forth. And so it's either going to stay the same or it's going to get worse. So I haven't been to see, and last time I checked, I was at about 7% left centrally. So as we all know central vision.
Yeah.
It's like I've had interviews with other people where I'm like, I need to explain what choroideremia is. Here it is. Versus you already know. And so is everyone watching.
Yeah.
So I have probably about anywhere between 5 and 7% of my vision left all centrally. I do have a cane, a couple different canes that I traditionally use more for identification for other people than I do for my own ability to move. because it's just, we already know we're going to bump into people. And so having the cane, typically, if someone's paying attention, which is like a 50-50, they see the cane and they move out of the way. When the others, they just walk and they get their legs caught in it's like sticking a stick in a spoke of a bike wheel. They trip over. It's like, sorry, I did this in the airport. A guy did that. And I said to him, as he turned around and saw the stick, I was like, sorry about that, bud. I didn't see you. And he started laughing. He's like, ah. I was like, yeah, it's funny because it's true.
It's true.
I'm going to go to the bar and drink. I'm a designated drinker.
That's a CRF conference thing. Speaking of which, now you've been to a conference or two.
I have.
So what was it like, your experience when you went to your first conference? And what would you say to other people about what it's like attending a conference?
It's totally awesome. Best party ever. No, I think it's really great because let me backtrack for just a second. It's a little bit overwhelming, to be honest, especially if you're new into the community. Because one of the things, to sidebar, one of the places I run is a cafeteria within the occupational vocational office for vocational rehab, where I am actually serving lunch and dinner to all these newly blind people. And so you're surrounded by blind people, where many of us, because both for my brother and I, we're the only ones in the family who have it. And everyone was kind of like taken by surprise by it. Although we now have suspicions about like my grandfather and stuff like that. So we didn't come up in a blind community. So for me, going to the first conferences is a bit overwhelming, a very much like stimulus overload, in that there's a whole bunch of blind people here. Mm-hmm. And then once you get past that and you realize they're just like us. Everyone is the same. We all have issues. Then you start making those connections. Once you get past kind of like the awkwardness of yourself, or like, I know how I deal with myself, but how do I deal with this other person who is also blind? Because we're different in that I deal a certain way, mostly, denial. But once you get past that, you start to make amazing friends who are, once you find those common denominators, music, movies, etc. But once you get past that, the first one was a little bit, again, overwhelming, the thought of like trying to navigate and deal with that. And then after that, it's like going back and hanging out with your buddies. It's like almost like a family reunion, because you get together, you hang out, you sit in and have to listen to some lectures about stuff from the people who come in who are talking about the upcoming trials and stuff like that. But it's a great experience once you're ready to receive that. Because I really think that if you're not in the right mind frame, it's not going to be of any benefit to you. Anything, but even just especially doing the conferences. But there's so much great information that comes out from it. And you start to really make connections with, as we've seen so many connections with the doctors who are pioneering these clinical trials, and they know us and we know them. And it just makes me feel better about where we're going with looking to cure both choroideremia and any and all other kind of degenerative eye diseases.
Yeah, and that kind of segues into what I was going to ask you next. How do you feel about the research that's going on?
I'm I'm hopeful, but I'm hesitantly hopeful. A lot of times, and I think maybe you and I have had these kind of conversations in the past before, in the sense of, I know that it may not have come into being in my eyes lifetime, but for, luckily Finnegan, being a boy, doesn't have it.
Yeah.
But like my children might never have to suffer like this. Might never have to worry about losing their eyesight. So I think like the next generation coming up are going to really benefit from it. But again, I used to be like the gung-ho, heart on the sleeve, 100% passion, emotion, let's do this thing. And then you get burned enough times and you're like, I'll believe it when I see it. But I am hesitantly hopeful that these things are coming. And even if, because I'll be completely honest with you, there are days when you wake up and you have that bad eye day and you're just like, not like I'm ready to be blind, but like it would just be easier if I was just blind now completely, because then I could just be done with it and move on to that next chapter. But at the same time, I'm like, if I could retain this vision, the 5, 6, 7% I still have, or get slightly more, I would love that. I would love to not have to worry about going blind. And so that's where that kind of hesitant hopefulness comes from for me.
I like that phrase. That's good. And then that is
Yours, use it.
so now. Oh, it's not licensed? All right.
No, unlike so many other things I've trademarked, you can use that one.
So now what, and again, as I mentioned, you've been in members for you and your parents and Todd have all been members of the CRF for a while. So what does the CRF mean to you? And how do you feel about the CRF and what they are doing and what they have done and the mission?
One of the things that, so early, like my parents, my mom specifically, my dad in following my mom, because has been such huge champions of the various organizations out there that have been working to halt or cure choroideremia as well as others. But I will tell you that for me with the CRF is that it's very specific to me versus broad for everything. And so I absolutely appreciate having the network of people who all have the same disease, varying degrees of it, and are working together through one way or the other to try and support each other and find a way to solve this problem. Because there's so many other, it's kind of like when you think about the varying other blind foundations out there that are just kind of general blind foundations. They're not specifically for like MD or CHM or Star Guards or whatever. They're just like everything, blanket blindness fighting, which is great. That's where we start. And then once you start to find organizations like the CRF, where it's like, I've got choroideremia, this is the foundation I want to be connected to because they're working specifically for my disease. And that whether or not the clinical trials that happen, if they help us, they probably will help somebody else. But we're targeting specifically for choroideremia, which is, I think, needed versus kind of like, it's like getting that, what do you call it, broad spectrum antibiotics versus give me penicillin because I need that to cure what's going on with me. Mm-hmm. So I'm so thankful to have the organization for various reasons. The networking aspect of having other people who have the disease spread across the world that we can kind of connect to and talk about if you're having a bad day. And I've seen you post those things so many times about introducing other people who are having issues and how can we help? How can we ease the burden? And it's a truly amazing organization, and I'm so thankful to be a part of it.
Well, we're thankful to have you, and we can't go any further without mentioning driving blind.
Yes.
Now, Todd and I, we talked about it a bit, and I got his perspective, and he did mention there was almost murders along the way at some point or another.
Sometimes just between us and the crew, other times because of the crew.
Now, who came up with the name? And I forgot to ask Todd this. Who actually came up with the name Driving Blind?
I did.
You did. Okay. I always loved that. I thought that's just.
Thank you. Thank you. It stemmed early on, and when Todd watches this, he might say, "I came up with it." That Todd that himself came up with it. He came up with so much that went down with the film. But I am 99.9. I'm ivory soap sure that I came up with it, and the limited sight, unlimited vision. Although we've seen it other places after this, so again, we didn't copyright or anything. But yeah, I came up with it.
Okay, that's good. Now, what was the experience like from your end of things? I mean, and well, just in case there's somebody on the planet that hasn't seen this, and if you haven't seen it,
Such an award-winning film. How have you not seen it? It's like, Forrest Gump, Schindler's List. You got to watch it.
exactly.
So, Driving Blind is a documentary that Todd and I made, where we drove around the perimeter of the United States, honoring the loss of peripheral vision we had with choroideremia, to see the sites before we lost the ability to do so. And we shot it back in 2010. It was about a 6-week journey around the United States, clocked in about 13,000 miles on our parents' Ford Escape, which they generously loaned us to do the film. And so we just wanted to, I wanted to do something and to honor, I wanted to circumnavigate something. I was like, I want to do it. And I called my brother, and we would talk a lot about different things. And I said, I want to do this thing. I want to drive around the United States and see the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota and all this stuff. And he got gung ho about it. And he was talking ideas like, yeah, we could like strap GoPros all over the car and shoot it. And I was just like, that's great. Let's make a documentary about it. Let's do this thing, because who knows where that could go. And then we were able to do some outreach and get support from friends, and we got a great film crew that shot the movies, who followed behind us in a Econoline van decked out with editing gear and stuff in it. Nice. And we drove around, and the director brought some of his ideas in, along with what Todd and I had talked about. And anytime you've got creative people working together, and not to say like no one was in charge, but everyone thought they were in charge. And so that created some clashes, these murders you speak of. So like I was tasked kind of with being the executive producer, in that I raised the money in order to pay for everyone to be able to go and do this. And so sometimes I would say, well, we need to go do this because, well, I raised the money. So do what I say. I'm still trying to make that happen in this life now, to be like, I make money, somebody give me attention. But so we started shooting it, and the director, he brought a lot of great ideas in to play with the senses, the other senses, everything from smells and tastes and sensory deprivation tanks, which was an amazing experience to go into. I recommend it to anybody who's comfortable enough to just be completely by themselves in a void. I found it to be very almost therapeutic. But to this day, it's been 11 years. I'm like, I can't remember what I thought, but I thought it was very profound. But yeah, so my brother and I, we got a film crew, and we drove around the United States, and we filmed it. And then we put together this movie. The production team put together the movie, and we've gotten several awards all over the U.S. and some international for it. I would have loved to see it go further, but of course, as we all deal with life, it was being pulled in multiple directions. So it's kind of had its moment in the sun, and now it's just there.
Although I did put the bug in Todd's ear about a Driving Blind sequel
overseas. Let's go to Europe.
I told him, I said, one of the things you can do, because I was kind of bummed you weren't able to come to my hood, in Springfield. You're up in Maine, and then you kind of bypassed me and went right to upstate.
Well, I'll tell you, to be honest, we didn't even get to Maine.
Yeah, that's right. Because you started.
We kind of cut the director, like on day one, we were 2 days behind.
Yeah.
And so the director was like, we're bypassing. We were in New York City, then we cut into Pennsylvania, and then we cut up to like Rochester, Niagara Falls, because I wanted to go to Massachusetts to go to the cranberry bog. I'd actually worked it all out. I was going to put on the wellies and go wading in a cranberry bog. But
I had a couple of things in Springfield that, and I'm sorry, but I still think video gold. Okay, three blind guys with canes going into the Basketball Hall of Fame and shooting hoops.
Love it.
That's just gold. B, three blind guys with canes walking into the Smith & Wesson Academy and asking to sign up for shooting lessons.
Yeah.
Okay, just to see the look on their faces would have been, like I said, gold, man.
Exactly.
This could. So I mentioned that to Todd, and Todd really likes the idea of shooting hoops too. So, you know, if he calls you about driving blind too.
I do it in a heartbeat.
Or heck, just come on up for a visit. Hey, we got 2 spare rooms. Grab the wife and
All
family.
right, we'll do that.
You know?
I'd love to do that. And a great thing about being blind and shooting hoops is it's all nothing but net. You're like, nailed it.
It's a really cool place too, because they have in the Hall of Fame. It's the basketball court itself it's not just, you know, a hoop at each end like a normal basketball court. There are hoops all the way around the court, and they start with the peach basket, and it's the evolution.
Oh, that's super cool. That is super cool.
Yeah. So you can like shoot hoops on a peach basket. You know,
yeah, I would do that. That'd be great. You just play a big game of horse, just moving around.
Oh gosh, if we had played horse, we'd be there for like 5-6 hours, man.
What are you on? I'm not even on H.
We're still on H because no one's made a basket yet. But I actually did that. You remember Mike McCarthy?
Yeah.
He visited when he and one of his friends visited. He was doing a college project, film project for college, and he came because he wanted to do an interview with me and stuff. And I took him to the Basketball Hall of Fame, and he and I were shooting hoops, and his buddy Aaron was just on the floor because neither one of us.
Not even close. Not even close.
I couldn't even put in a layup. Are you kidding?
Alley-oop.
So anyway, as we wrap this up, do you have any? I want you to put yourself in the shoes of a young CHMer. Now that you're, I mean, not that you're not younger than me, because you are.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Someone who's not yet.
Yeah, and you know, some life advice for the young CHMers out there, or for the moms of young CHMers who might be watching this.
Well, I would say, firstly, to the moms, it's not your fault. That's the very first thing. I know that my mom carries so much guilt about passing this thing on to us that she didn't even know she had, that she was a carrier for. So to the moms, it's not your fault. To the kids, to the guys, to the boys, to the men who are just discovering it and coming into it, man, that's it. You got to be able to laugh. It's so hard to do sometimes, because I'll stick with just choroideremia, because there's so many other things you can talk about and say, you know, everybody's got something. Having a sense of humor about it can literally be a lifesaver.
Yeah.
And that expands beyond just choroideremia. But if you can laugh about it, it's going to help. And then be able to talk about it. That is something that is one of the most important things to do. Like with my wife, I sit back. She's my rock and my champion. I sit back and I tell her some days, and then this kind of throws me, because I say to her, like, I think my eyes are getting worse. And then she's like, oh yeah, they are. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. I kind of wanted some support. But I also love the fact that you're being honest. Having someone that you can talk to about it, both the highs and the lows. Because I think, so I got diagnosed when I was 14 and I'm 45 now. And I've had so many like once in a lifetime eye things occur positively that I don't know if I would have taken them so to heart if I hadn't been going blind. If I didn't know I was going blind. So yeah, if you can, laugh as much as possible about choroideremia and about just life. That would be helpful. And having your network that you can talk to, whether it be people who are also blind or just really close, trusted friends. Because for the first 20 years of my diagnosis, nobody knew about it except for my family. I played it all off because, like I said, I got diagnosed when I was 14, in the middle of junior high going into high school, and I wanted to be an actor, and I was doing plays, and nobody knew about it. I wouldn't talk about it, and I played off every stumble caused by choroideremia. I played off like I was intending to do it. I made a joke of it, and that helped me deal with it, as well as, you know, other people who have, like, I've had friends reconnect with me post high school, and they find out, because I'm much more of an advocate for it now. I talk freely about it. And they're like, "You're blind? When did this happen?" I was like, "Before I met you." It's also great for picking up chicks. Not gonna lie. They love a blind, handsy man. It's the great thing ever. So sorry.
Although I have to say, you know, having a guide dog is much more of a chick magnet than the white cane.
I agree with that. I want to get white canes shaped like guide dogs. No, I bet they are, because they all come up and they're like, "Oh my God." And then you have to be like, "She's working, but you can totally talk to me."
Yeah. And hey, you know, you could always get those, you know, they have those joke leashes with the little harnesses, or it looks like you have the invisible dog.
Yep.
And then paint that.
Take a "I'm working" vest on the back end of it.
Yeah, paint it white. You know, paint the actual leash white, and the harness itself red with the, you know, the guide dog working thing.
That is so funny.
I think we just found a new money maker for ourselves, Justin.
That's right. That's gonna bring all the money we need in order to get the clinical trials up and running and find a cure. Let's do that. That's a brilliant idea. I love that idea. It's so much fun.
I'm gonna get to work on that.
Yep. Put all our minds together and go. I'm sure we can get on wish.com and buy like 5,000 of those for like $20. We just get some spray paint.
Get some spray. All we need then is some spray paint. We're good to go.
Yeah. Just,
you know,
blindly spraying. Whee! We should open a window. This is a bad idea.
All right, well, listen, my friend, it was so good touching base with you again.
You too.
And having this conversation. I'd like to thank you for joining me, and I'd like to thank everybody else for watching. So thank you, Justin.
No problem. My absolute pleasure. Thanks, Cory.
All right, and we will see you all hopefully at the next Meet a CHM family member. Thanks again.